Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. I am your host, Lauren Dreyer, and today we are talking about visions. And I'm not just talking about creating a vision board, which, first of all, yes, I do think it's important. I think it's important to have a vision board and have it in front of you on a daily basis, if not all day, because that's what that's what makes your mind remember that this is what you're working for. And when things get muddy, busy, and tough, you need that there to remind you what you're going for, what you want, maybe what your values are, all that kind of stuff. That is important. Yes, I have one. It's in my planner. I see it on an hourly basis, but I am talking more about creating a vision in your mind. And I say this because I've talked a lot about this on here as well as with some other people. And it is what you focus on, you attract. Meaning, when all you do is focus on, the bad things that are happening or um, anything to that extent, you tend to just keep attracting those negative things. You attract negative people who will just kind of bring you down a little bit. Whatever you focus on, you keep attracting more of. And not to say there are not negative things in the world, because obviously we all know that there's a lot of negative things in the world. But when you focus on those things, when you focus on the things that are going wrong, when you focus on the things that you think are going to go wrong, it has a much better chance of those things going wrong, instead of saying, well, yeah, those things could go wrong, but I'm going to choose to focus on what I want to happen, what I want the outcome to be, the positive things, the things that are going to get you where you want to move to. And I want to know how many people have taken the time to dream. Yes, I said dream. And I mean not while you're sleeping, but maybe that too. I'm talking about more of in that quiet space, whether that's in the morning, whether it's on your drive to wherever, whether it's in the afternoon during your lunch break, and you're just kind of letting yourself zone out for a little bit and think about where you're going and what you want. Wherever that space is for you, maybe it's on a run, maybe it's on a treadmill while you're exercising, because exercising or physical activity is known to help stimulate that process and help get those creative juices flowing. But I want to know if you allow yourself to dream and dream big about the things you want, the things that if you could have these things, then man, your life would be great. Those things that you're like, well, that would be nice. I wish I could do this. And take the time to dive into those things. Do you allow yourself to dream big, or do you have those thoughts and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, you know, everyone wants to dream, or, you know, it's always nice to dream, but back to reality. And what would happen if, while in that process, while in that state and thinking about those dreams, you allowed yourself to more or less experience that? What if you allowed yourself to be in that space, um in that brain state? And I say that because being in that certain brain state is actually a different type of brain wave. And through all of the states, it allows you to um it allows you to have a little bit more creativity. And well, there's a lot of different research that goes into that, but I've looked into it a little bit and I think it's so cool. But it says when you're in that, when your brain waves are in that state, they're at that level, then you kind of start to have those creative juices flowing and your body starts to react a little bit to where you can actually start to visualize yourself in that moment and draw that clear picture for yourself. And I've heard a lot of people say, this happens. This is exactly what I saw in my head. And I've heard a lot of people say, if you can visualize it, you can do it. And so they will literally put themselves in a state where you picture yourself in this certain place. Maybe it's sitting in an executive's office, this place where maybe you go there physically and you're like, man, I would love to have this job. I would love to, have this office and be the one that gets to sit in this awesome chair and sit in this awesome corner office or whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you visualize like this big old grand studio where you get to create videos and create all these great things, or this studio that brings out your creative juices and you get to sit there and write. Maybe you imagine yourself on some big stage where you get to inspire and speak life and passion into people. Maybe that's just me, but you get to actually create that vision of, in your mind, standing wherever you're standing, sitting wherever you're sitting, and saying, this is where I want to be. And allow yourself to feel the nerves, feel the excitement, feel the satisfaction of being in that life. So regardless of how logical this is or is not, allow yourself to dream and visualize that. And allow yourself to feel the excitement of what it would feel like to be able to sit in that space and create, the amount of pride, the amount of credibility you would feel, all of those things. And when you're sitting in that state, when you're allowing yourself to visualize these places, these things, this life, and being able to be in it, your creative juices start flowing. And when you actually kind of create that dream and that almost alternate reality, you start to think, man, that was realistic. Maybe that's what I want. Maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe that's what I want to go for. And you start to say, okay, this would be kind of cool. And you start to develop all these tiny little ideas of how you can get there. And I'm here to tell you, those ideas, those tiny little things, are what you need to take action on. Because when you start to say, well, this dream over here, this thing that I'm visualizing, it seems crazy. And then the logic of your brain, the fear part of your brain, jumps in and says, you could never do that. That's too big. Like you could never have that life, when actually you could. And your brain starts coming up with like all these, well, it's too much, but here's all the tiny little things. Well, I'd have to learn that. And when you start doing that kind of stuff and you come up with those little tiny steps, it's going to take work. It's going to take people, it's going to take support, and it's going to take sacrifice. But when you're able to plant that dream and then build off of that vision of where you want, and then you voice it to people, you start talking about it, you start developing that dream and say, hey, I was just kind of thinking about this tell me how crazy I am for wanting to do this. Because, folks, that's exactly what I did. And I said, tell me how crazy I am for wanting to do all of these things. And you know what I got told? You're not crazy. I think you'd be great at this. I think you could do this. And all of a sudden, when somebody else told me out loud that I could do it, I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And then all of a sudden, when somebody else tells you that they believe in you, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I just kind of started speaking that into existence. And now all of a sudden, I believe I can do it. And that fire starts to build. So, how do you focus on that dream and that vision? By believing that you can do it. And when you start believing you can do it and you start taking those small, tiny steps towards that vision, you start to attract the people that can help you get there. You start to attract the people that say, I think you can do this. And whether they can help get you there, or maybe they help point you in the direction of getting there, or maybe they help develop a skill that's going to help get you there. But when you plant that dream, when you develop that vision and say, you know what, this may be kind of big, but I can do it, people start coming into your life, law of attraction, people start coming into your life that can help you to do that, who can attach themselves to that dream, attach themselves to that vision, or that you can attach yourself and say, whatever you're doing is going to help me get to where I'm going. And we tend to get very stuck in here's what I visualize, here's what I want, here's what I'm picturing, when life takes us on a very different journey and it doesn't usually look like how we picture it, because that's life, right? But you have that vision, you have that goal, and you just keep moving on that windy path to get there. But that dream and that vision, I think, has three important factors of what it needs to have with it. It needs to make you a little nervous, because if it doesn't make you a little bit nervous, then it's not going to make you grow, and there's not going to be the excitement there. That's number two. You're going to be nervous because your body is going to, your logic is going off in your brain. The fear part of your brain is like, well, you're getting out of your comfort zone. I don't think you can do this. So nerves are going to show up. Fear is going to show up. Anxiety for me showed up because I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make this happen. But then it's also going to have this excitement piece to it, to where it's like, if you've ever heard somebody be like, well, I'm really nervous. I also kind of want to go throw up a bit, because there's that it's big feeling. Like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I'm going to figure it out. If that's where you come from, I would tell you you're on the right track, because if it's not big enough to make you grow, if it's not big enough to where it's not going to be a little work, then it's not big enough. It's when you start to develop that vision, develop that dream, it needs to be big, to where you're like, okay, I'm going to get excited about working on this, because man, how awesome is that going to be when you get there? The dream has to be big enough to keep you excited. And I've heard some people say that you don't have a dream that's going to scare you away? And I would say yes and no. That comes with a couple little asterisks for me. And when I say that, I mean, for me, it needs to be big enough to where it gets you nervous, excited. It needs to not be big and not be too big to where it paralyzes you in fear. Because I have absolutely been there to where I'm like, yeah, okay, I like too much, too much. And if it's to the point that you're like, yeah, too much, maybe it's not the right vision and goal. Because if it's the right vision and dream and goal, then the things that come at you are not going to stop you. You're going to be like, okay, here's this obstacle, but I want this bad enough. So how am I going to get through it? How am I going to learn through it? How am I going to grow through it? You're on the right track if there are those pieces of you that are just like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. The other piece I would tell you is you're not going to be able to do anything alone. If you have a vision, if you have a dream and it's big enough, you can't do it alone. You will always have the ideas, and those will always be yours. The vision will always be yours, but it's always going to take people, whether it be someone who wrote a book that gets you somewhere, someone who boosted you up, somebody who believed in you, somebody who gave you a chance, and the people around you who supported you when you had the doubts, when you had the fears, or that are just going to give you a chance because they believe in you, they like you, and they're going to support you in what you're doing. So when all this comes together, you start talking about it, you develop it. All of a sudden, you start taking those small actions to say, okay, here's all the tiny things that are going to get me to these milestones, that are going to get me to this ultimate dream, ultimate vision. But allow yourself to feel it in your gut. Allow yourself to get anxious, excited, nervous in your gut, and then say, do I want this or do I not? And then voice it to somebody and say, tell me how crazy I am for potentially wanting to do this, because most of the time we make too big a deal of it in our head to where it scares us off and we're like, yeah, we could never do this. I don't want to do this. But the minute you voice it and somebody says, yeah, I think you can do it, all of a sudden it's, okay, I can do this. Now I can go figure it out. Visualize the things that you want. Draw a picture in your head of you being in that space, and then return to that often. Return to how it feels, and then come up with the different little small steps that you can take to get there. But go with that gut feeling of, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do to get there. And know that if it's big enough, you can't do it alone. Nobody can. Nobody does anything alone without the books, the resources, the people, the classes, the polishing of the skills, any of that. But it is doable. And then it takes unwavering belief in yourself that you can make it happen. Because when it comes time to get some grit, to get past the criticism, internal or external, you got to have that belief, or else you're going to get stuck and you're going to allow yourself to be stopped by the roadblocks. So go with your gut and build that vision. Figure out what you want and live in that vision and how it makes you feel, how it looks. And it's okay if that shifts a little bit. But go with that gut, go with that vision, and then keep on going.